You just made dumb decision after dumb decision and just stayed dumb all that time. Just kept doing dumb things, right?
Yes, sir.
No, sir. No. You're trying to make sense of it, Mr. Lindsay. It doesn't make any sense. You are a pretty smart guy, and you're trying to apply logic to what you did. Well, I just wasn't making good decisions. I just was acting stupid. No, you're a drug addict. Drug addicts make bad decisions because they're drug addicts. I'm an alcoholic. I'll make you a long list of the bad decisions I made. And you know what? The very first meeting I ever went to, first AA meeting I went to, and I didn't go through treatment or anything. I'll tell you what I said. I said, I can't believe I'm so stupid. It's exactly what I said and exactly how I felt until I learned that.
And we are about to watch the parole hearing of a man who is serving a life sentence for really paraphernalia type charges. Now, that is Keith Jones speaking. Maybe you're familiar with him. Maybe you've never seen him. Maybe you'd like to see him more. Let me know in the comment section. But he might be considered Mr. Mirabella's sidekick, or maybe Mr. Mirabella was his sidekick. Now, this hearing is back from 2020, and I have to tell you, it's not a simple case. Someone comes in like a wrecking ball. I'll unpack it with all the details at the
We have John Stanford Lindsay, 110560, 53-year-old fourth-class offender, possession with intent to distribute methamphetamines, creation or operation of a clandestine laboratory, conspiracy, production, manufacture of meth, possession of 12 grams or more of ephedrine or pseudoephedrine, serving 7 years, life, 10 years, 2 years. Parole date, April 28th, 2019. Not eligible for good time. Full term is full term is life. Is that correct, Mr. Lindsay?
Yes, sir.
Speak a little louder.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Please answer Mr. Mirabella's questions.
Mr. Lindsay, how are you, sir? My name is Tony Marabella. I'm going to ask you a few questions. How long have you been in jail?
A little over 16 years, sir.
Tell me about your past history. Your supervision history hasn't been very good. You're asking us to parole you, to put you out on the streets to be supervised, and you haven't had a very good history of supervision. Tell me why we should grant you parole with your history of supervision.
I'm done with all of it.
Well, tell me about it. How is it that you're done with it? I mean, if I was in jail for 16 years, I'd say the same thing probably. So
Well,
tell me a little more.
all I can say is that for a smart person, I've always considered myself to be smart. I've made some real stupid decisions. And when it comes to that meth, it's the only way I know to explain it is like a little tar baby. It starts real small and it rolls and it gets bigger, everything sticks to it. Before you know it, you're stuck in it and it's big, it just rolls. And it takes on a life of its own. I'm done with it.
How old were you when you started using drugs?
Pretty young. Pretty young.
Teens? What?
Yes, sir.
What did you start out with?
Crank,
Where'd you go from there?
smoke a little pot, drink a little, pills here and there.
How'd you get into distribution?
That's that tar baby, sir. It rolls and before you know it, you start as a user and having a good time. Before you know it, you're picking up chemicals, and the next thing you know, you're making it and slinging it. And it's like I said, it takes on a life of its own. It consumes.
Prior to going to jail 16 years ago, how many times had you gone to jail before that?
I don't know the exact count, sir, but several, numerous.
Have you ever had any drug treatment outside of prison?
outside of prison.
Yeah.
No, sir.
Were you on, when you were on parole or on probation on various offenses, you weren't required to go get substance abuse treatment or anything like that?
No, sir.
Tell me what you've done while you've been in prison. What programs involving substance abuse right now while you've been in prison?
I've completed substance abuse programs. I've dabbled with NA a little bit, AA some. Not a
When you
whole
say you dabbled with it, what does that mean?
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. When I got arrested on this one, I haven't done drugs since. I haven't done meth since. It's here. When I focus on something, I'm a pretty determined person. I was determined to break the law, and I did a hell of a job at it. Now I'm determined that I'm through with it. And I focused on other things. Some of it might seem insignificant. I got a big old tomcat. 6 years, I take care of this cat. I focus, I do my hobby craft. I'm excellent. I'm extremely well.
How old are you, Mr. Lindsay?
54.
And you've been doing drugs at least 30-something years?
Well, if you take away the last 16, no.
All right, well, 25 years, 20-something years.
Yes, sir.
You a drug addict?
No, sir.
You're not a drug addict.
I'm through with it.
Well, I understand you haven't done drugs in a while, but are you a drug addict? You could have stopped anytime you wanted when this big bowl was rolling all over you. That tar baby that you were talking about, methamphetamines, you could have stopped it anytime.
You get caught up in the money. You get caught up in the money, you get caught up in the character of it.
Well, Mr. Lindsay, let me slow you down for a second. If you don't think you're an addict, then I'm very concerned about that, because that means that you're just going to go right back out, find out whatever other problems there are. Now, look, I don't doubt for a second that as you sit there, right as you sit there, that after the last 16 years, you don't think you need any treatment, you don't need anything, you're ready, you made up your mind. It's not about willpower.
If the board would like me to get treatment, I'll take any
Well,
treatment.
no. That's the problem. It ain't the board. If you don't want treatment, if you don't think you need treatment, it ain't gonna work. You don't seem to have taken enough programs, in my opinion, right now, to make you understand that you're a drug addict and that you can't survive without either going to meetings, support groups, and other things like that. I mean, you described to me a very horrible sounding life of drug addiction. And now you tell me, well, you know, I'm clean, I'm cured, I don't need anything anymore, I can do it on my own, I can focus. That isn't the way it works. You believe that? Do you believe that's what you've learned in these programs in prison?
Sir, this is Angola. There's drugs everywhere down there. I have not had a single write-up for any type of drug possession, no alcohol. I've never failed a urine test, and I get urine tested regular. This is the Angola rodeo in arts and crafts.
All right, well, let me slow you down, Mr. Lindsay. Being in Angola and not taking drugs is a whole lot different than being out on the streets and not taking drugs. I agree, there are drugs there, you could have done them.
Yes, sir, they're here.
But there's a lot more structure over your head than there is outside.
Yes, sir.
So how are you going to handle that?
First thing I'm gonna do is get me a job, place I'm going to the halfway house, if they're gonna help me get work. They have a curriculum there where I have to participate in classes and programs that they offer. I'm gonna participate with those, and I'm gonna do the right thing.
Well, tell me what you did learn in the substance abuse programs that you took. What did you learn?
There's no soft line. There's no, well, I'm gonna do a little bit and then be good over here. There's no fence. You either do it or you don't do it. You can't just dabble with it. You can't dabble with it. You just stop. You know, I've lost everything. including my family, things that I can't even articulate. I'm not speaking financially, I'm talking the things in my life I've lost. And when I look back at it, I can't offer a reasonable explanation for the way I live. But I know I've got to do something different. I can't live that way. I'm not gonna live that way. So,
Is someone there from the prison?
yes, sir.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Warden, tell us a little bit about Mr. Lindsay.
Well, he's a real quiet kind of guy, keeps to himself. As he mentioned, his hobby craft is what he kind of puts his life into. He looks forward to the rodeo. He works in a hobby shop. He very seldom, no problems. He doesn't get write-ups, kind of sticks to himself, and that hobby shop is his life. That's what he lives for.
Okay.
Do his hobby craft, go to rodeo.
Thank you. That's all I've got, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Lindsay, good afternoon. You ready, Mr. Lindsay?
Yes, sir.
Take a second.
I'm ready.
Mr. Lindsay, I've been listening, but I really didn't tell me the programs that you've taken or the treatment that you've treated for your drug addiction.
I've completed the substance abuse program. I've completed the anger management.
Okay. What substance abuse? Louisiana risk management?
Yes, sir, I've done all that. The one that's
You take-
sponsored by Angola's mental health department, I've completed it.
Okay, and you've taken both phases of Louisiana risk management.
Yes, sir.
You attend NAAA meetings on a regular basis?
They don't have them back here on a regular basis. They got a AA meeting and I attend from time to time when they have it. I work at night and the meetings at night. I'm not gonna say that I'm there every time they have the meeting, but I have attended them.
Okay. So tell me exactly what you plan to do if you're released.
Well, I'm set up to go to a place called the Refinery in Opelousas, Louisiana. And they said that they'll help me get work, get established. And I want to get on my feet. My ultimate goal is I want to start a business. Warden would always said my hobby craft. I found something that I'm really gifted at. And I build furniture, I build tables, chairs, rocking chairs, double rockers, some indoor furniture for the house. I also build models such as model trains, wooden from scratch, boats, airboats, heroes. I build all kind of.
If it's made out of wood, you can build it.
Yes, sir. But I also do leather work. I also paint, and I also do jewelry, stainless steel buckles, medallions, rings. I'm very good with these, with my hands.
Okay, so you telling me that you can make a living without selling drugs?
Yes, sir.
Why didn't you discover that before now?
Young and stupid.
Okay. Thank you. Before I turn it over, I'd like to congratulate you on your GED in 2014.
Thank you. I'm very proud of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Mr. Lindsay, let's you and I have a talk.
Yes, sir.
Is alcoholism a disease?
Yes, sir.
Is drug addiction a disease?
I believe it to be so.
What kind of disease?
I believe it to be both physical and mental. Because I've seen people with serious withdrawals and the things that it does physically to the body, and I know what it'll do mentally to the body.
Yeah, the physical addiction is practically nothing, Mr. Lindsay. Let me assure you of that. That means almost nothing. How many times did you say you went to jail? Several times, right?
Yes, sir.
Always over drugs.
Drugs are drug related in some
Yeah,
fashion.
that's what I meant. You
Right.
drugs, or you're stealing something to buy drugs, or like that, right? And you described yourself as a pretty smart man.
For the most part, I thought it was.
And you just made dumb decision after dumb decision and just stayed dumb all that time, just kept doing dumb things, right?
Yes, sir.
No, sir. No. You're trying to make sense of it, Mr. Lindsay. It doesn't make any sense. You are a pretty smart guy, and you're trying to think to apply logic to what you did. Well, I just wasn't making good decisions. I just was acting stupid. No, you're a drug addict. Drug addicts make bad decisions because they're drug addicts. I'm an alcoholic. I'll make you a long list of the bad decisions I made. And you know what? The very first meeting I ever went to, first AA meeting I went to, and I didn't go through treatment or anything. I'll tell you what I said. I said, I can't believe I'm so stupid. It's exactly what I said and exactly how I felt, until I learned that it's much more than that. You got really smart alcoholics and drug addicts out there. It's not intelligence. It's not wisdom. It's whether or not you have that disease. There are plenty of people that snorted, that took meth, whatever form, first time, didn't much care for it. Did it twice. Yeah, they left it alone. Why didn't you do that? Because you're dumb?
Well, sir, I thought it was fun initially.
Yeah.
Fun, it was a good time. And then I got involved in the financial aspects of it, and I learned to make it, and it just turned into a big tar baby, and I was stuck to it.
That
A lot
tar
of
baby,
aspects to it.
Mr. Lindsay, that tar baby is the disease I've been trying to talk to you about. And it's not logical. Stop trying to figure it out. You have to, what you're supposed to learn in all those courses you took is that it's acceptance. You are in denial of your addiction because you're trying to make sense of it. Well, I just was stupid, is how you feel. And that's the easy way, because all you say, I'll just be smart from now on. And I fixed it. But it's not that simple. You are, not only have you been a drug addict, and even though you haven't used anything for 16 years, you are a drug addict. And here's the worst news, you're always going to be a drug addict.
Yes, sir, but I can't do
It's how it works, Mr. Lindsay. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad tidings,
I believe you.
but the treatment, there's a treatment for it, an effective treatment, but you got to keep taking it until you're 6 feet under. And that is turning to other alcoholics and drug addicts and gaining strength from them to live.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sorry?
I'm more than willing to participate in programming.
Yes, sir, I know. And if I told you I wanted you to paint my initials on the top of your head to get out on parole, you'd do that too. I get it. I know you're going to be tell me you're willing to do that, but what I'm worried about is whether you just clock time because that's what your parole officer says you have to do, or whether you're finally gonna, if there's any chance that you may finally, you haven't got him 16 years. you know, you went in and out of jail, and finally 16 years, life sentence because you were dumb. Does that make sense?
Well,
Is there anybody that dumb?
yes, sir, I'm dumb.
No.
I threw away my life.
Yes, sir. You made some bad decisions, but the decisions were influenced by the fact that you're a drug addict and won't accept it.
Oh, I accept it. I've never.
And what do you and what have you done about it?
I've completely.
You go to an occasional AA meeting when the spirit moves you.
No, sir, I work at night. My job is at night, and when they do have meetings at Camp D, they're also at night. My hobby shop orderly, I clean up at closing and log the flammables. Sometimes I can go, sometimes I can't go.
Well, I got good news for you. In the days of Zoom, you can go to an AA meeting any hour of the day or night. 24 meetings a day if you want.
We don't have that capability.
I understand that, Mr. Lindsay. I'm talking about when you get out on parole, you'll get a chance.
I hope you give me that chance.
I know you do, but you're making it so hard on me. And I don't think and I don't think you can understand what it is you're making so difficult. You're telling me you're willing to do whatever it takes. And you haven't yet come to accept that what you have is a disease. Now, if you want to call it a mental disorder or emotional disease, I don't give a shit what you call it. Don't care. Is it a personality defect? Okay, I got that. I'll take it as long as I accept what I have and I'm willing to do something about it. But I cannot do it by myself.
Well, I'm going to a program that offers treatments. I'm not exactly sure all the programs that this place has. It's called the Refinery in Opelousas.
I know all about the refinery, Lindsay, and it's a great place for you. A great place.
They said I got programs. I got to attend and complete.
But you're doing a life sentence. That means you're on parole for the rest of your life.
Yes.
And if we say you're going to AA meetings for the rest of your life, that's what you're doing.
Yes.
If you want to stay out, you know, if you decide you want to go ahead and use some more, you can go right back to jail the way you went back to jail so many times before.
I'm done with that.
I know. And how many times did you say that?
Never.
How many times did you get out of jail and say, I'm done?
Never.
Well,
I never said it before.
It has an attraction for you it never had for me. I swore I was going to stop drinking 100 times because I was causing problems, big problems. 1,000 times, kept right going back to it because that's what my disease told me to do. That's where I escaped. That's what I hid behind. So I'm going to be very eager to hear what my colleagues have to say to you, Mr. Lindsay. Mr. Hunley.
How you doing?
Fine. How are you?
The tough spot to come in.
Yes, sir.
Andrew Hunley, Louisiana Parole Project. We were asked to, our organization was asked by Angola staff to consider Mr. Lindsay for our program. And we came in and interviewed him. And it's really tough part of my job is oftentimes there are people that we want to help, but by our own regulations, we can't necessarily help them. So as you know, our organization, we're based on serving people who've served long prison sentences. And the way our organization defines that is 20 years or more served. And as you're aware, Mr. Lindsay's just served 16. And certainly I'm not advocating he needs to serve 20 years before I can help him. But due to his, looked at his criminal history, obviously y'all are aware, I know the DA's here, everyone knows he has had an extensive criminal history. I've lived with a lot of people whenever I was incarcerated with, criminal behavior and criminal thinking. And I've interviewed a lot of people and I think I've done an okay job of starting to detect that. I can tell you what I recognized from interviewing Mr. Lindsay and from reviewing his record is I honestly feel that he has reached his breaking point during this incarceration. I honestly believe before he didn't have the empathy and the willpower to change his life until this incarceration. He's lost a lot since he's been incarcerated. As he said, he's lost his family. He's alone in the world right now, and that's why he reached out to us for help. But because of the support he has from Angola staff and what he has done to change his behavior within the institution, which I agree it is a structured environment, but there are a lot of people who continue not to be able to live good lives in that structured environment. He's doing well. He also discovered about himself he's a very talented person. Whether it's woodwork, leatherwork, art, as he said, he can make anything. And I think him having the confidence to know now that he can do something besides make drugs is an incentive to him to know he can go out and do better things. I certainly defer to Judge Marabella on, the issues that he was speaking about earlier, because he's recognized drug abuse and alcoholism and worked in that field much longer than I ever had. What I was prepared to offer to the board today before this interview is, my opinion is that, yeah, he could have gone to more AA and NA meetings while he was incarcerated. I also know he's gone through Angola's drug treatment program. And my concern is knowing that he has hit his bottom and he wants to live a crime-free life, and he has the tools and the willpower to do that. Addressing the elephant in the room, his issue now is how does he continue to live a drug-free life, and how does he access those tools if he is ever released? I was going to recommend to this board that, in my opinion, I feel like he's an excellent candidate for the Steve Hoyle program. He needs something intensive before he's released. And as I said, he's not eligible for my program only because of the time he served. However, we called the refinery mission in Opelousas because, one, I wanted to get him as far away from St. Tammany Parish and anyone else in that area he may know, and get him to an area where he doesn't know anybody, no one knows him, and he's going to have very little room for error if he does go to the refinery in Opelousas, because it is a zero tolerance program, and they will call, if the first time he messes up, they're going to call his parole officer, and he's going to be revoked that quickly. They're a stickler for the rules there, but they will give him all the opportunities to succeed. So my recommendation would be to consider him for Steve Hoyle, Opelousas Refinery. He will have access to AA meetings in Opelousas. They do transport their clients. If someone misses an AA, they will report him to his parole officer. They will not wait for the parole officer to figure out that he's missing AA and NA meetings. So we know he doesn't have anyone left. So I know the board's then got to be wondering, well, how long would he be at Opelousas? So in the last year and a half, the refinery has added some apartments to in addition to the transitional dormitories they have. And when they have guys such as Mr. Lindsay who don't have a family to go to when he completes the program, they make sure they're working, they're earning, and then they will rent him an apartment at their the few apartments they have. And we've already discussed this and let them know that Mr. Lindsay would be someone who would literally be looking to find a job in Opelousas and rebuild his life there where no one knows him, where he knows nobody. So that would be the plan, is for him to find a job there, stay in that community. He starts the AA meetings he'll start going to. Obviously, it would be via Zoom for a while, but it would be in that community, so he could keep going to the same AA meetings, and then hopefully over time he would be able to transition into his own apartment. However, I will tell you, although that he isn't eligible to be in the Parole Project housing program, that I'll ensure that he has case management support from the time that he gets to Opelousas, if you were to grant him, until the point where he would exhaust our program, go into what we call phase 5. And I'll also say if Parole Project catches wind that he's not doing the thing, we'll report him to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heinlein. Mr. Lindsay, you got anything you want to tell us before we vote?
Please give me a chance. I'm ready for it.
All right, panel prepared to vote? Mr. Mirabella.
Mr. Lindsay, I've listened to you today.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Yes.
do we have a DA on the line?
Yes, member.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I wanted to take a moment to just be brief and discuss his case. I'm with the DA's office in St. Tammany Parish. It's the 22nd Judicial District. We have some very significant concerns regarding this person. We think that he's a dangerous individual. I've spoken with law enforcement, one of the arresting officers in his case. And I don't know how familiar you are with the particulars of his underlying offense, but multiple guns were recovered. A knife was recovered, taped to a steering column of his vehicle. Some of those guns had obliterated serial numbers, cooking equipment for methamphetamine, very significant and sophisticated operation. We're talking, he also had voice changers, gloves, radios, a stun gun, police style radios, additional magazines. And after talking with the arresting officer, I was advised that Mr. Lindsay told them that he would have opened fire on them from the motel room if he had not been sick from a black widow spider bite. And that same officer did not want to make a statement today because he's in fear of his life, quite honestly. In addition to that, a review of our case notes that there was a threat to the trial judge. We don't know the specifics of that threat, however, but the arresting officer we spoke to advised that he had to notify that judge of Mr. Lindsay's threat. Now, in addition to all of that, I mean, his criminal record speaks for itself. He's a fourth-time offender. All of his convictions involve either A, drugs, B, firearms, or C, drugs and firearms. He's been revoked twice. The second time was involved with the instant offense. His comments from the parole officer are particularly troubling. Mentions that he has a volatile demeanor, which is, I think, supported by his threats towards law enforcement and the judge. Says he's involved in manufacture and possible distribution of meth. That was proven by the instant offenses. He usually carries a weapon. That was amply proven, multiple firearms. He uses his experience from incarceration to, one, know what evidence is required, and two, tailor his exact statement is, he's been incarcerated many years and has learned what evidence is required and what statements to give to make his lies believable. It appears at first glance to be of average intelligence with a moderate criminal past, but he is actually a calculating, methodical, shrewd, and mostly polite con man who engages in various offenses or various types of illegal industry. All law enforcement personnel are advised to use caution when dealing with this individual. I mean, that's pretty damning. And in addition to that, the pre-parole investigation noted that there were 31 rule violation reports, including theft, aggravated disobedience, and contraband. I don't know what's going on with that, but that's obviously a problem. And it's just our position that because he's been revoked twice, because he has this extensive record, because of these threats, because of all of this in totalis, we would oppose early release in no uncertain terms. And we urge the board to deny parole. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joyner. Is there a motion?
Yes, a motion for executive session.
Second.
Teresa?
Mr. Marabella,
Yes.
Mr. Roche,
Yes,
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
We hear you.
Yes. Mr. Jones,
Yes, sir.
I have a question for Louisiana State Penitentiary staff, please. Warden Benoit,
Yes, sir.
could you ask your classification department to look at his sentence and his offense and see when he's eligible for a rehearing if denied? It's a nonviolent offense, but he has a life sentence. It's normally 6 months. Would it still be 6 months for a life sentence?
Still 6 months, because it's a nonviolent offense.
Yes, that's what I thought. I want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Is the town prepared to vote?
Yes.
Mr. Marabella?
Mr. Lindsay, I appreciate your honesty with me. I'm impressed that you've done a lot of good, positive things in the last 16 years. You indicated to us that, each other time you went to jail and got out, you never really wanted to stop. You never really wanted to stop the criminality. You never really wanted to stop the drug addiction or the drug use or the drug selling. Now you want to. I accept your word for that. However, you are a drug addict. You don't want to admit that. I mean, you might admit it now after hearing what all we said, but it's going to fall on deaf ears right now. You are a drug addict and you need more drug treatment before I'm willing to allow you to get out. I'm going to deny your parole today with the very strong recommendation that you try to get into the Steve Hoyle program. It's a long-term drug abuse and mental health program that will help you. And if you complete that program successfully, I would urge you to reapply, because to me today, the biggest problem that I have with you is the fact that you have not recognized, nor do you have the tools, in my opinion, to stay clean and sober and off of drugs. So that would be my vote to deny.
Sir, if I may.
No, you can't.
Sir,
Mr. Rocha?
Mr. Lindsay, my vote is the same, with the same recommendation that either the Department of Corrections or you write Dr. Tucker at the Steve Hall program and see if you can be enrolled. And after you complete that 6 or 9 month program, you'll be eligible to apply for a rehearing, and maybe there'll be a different story next time.
Did you want to say something, Mr. Lindsay, briefly?
Yes, sir. While the screen was blank, we was talking about that program, which you just mentioned, Steve Hall. And my understanding from what was said here in the room is that the board has to, because I'm a life sentence, I can't just go there, and Angola can't just send me there. The board has to actually make a recommendation that I go there officially to them in order for me to be able to get to that program.
which is exactly what we're doing.
There you go. Thank you, sir. Sorry
Now-
to interrupt.
Mr. Lindsay, you are a tough nut to crack, sir. And
Don't mean to be.
I know you don't. And look, you are a smart guy. I just told my colleagues when we were in our meeting, in the realm of alcoholics and drug addicts, the smarter they are, the harder they fall. It's harder to get a smart person to accept that they are powerless over alcohol and drugs than it is to get a dumb person to believe it. That's easy for them. But you're going to rationalize and figure out and say, well, I just made this mistake and I made this bad decision without ever surrendering the fact that you are powerless over it, except when you get strength from others. And I hope that's what you choose to learn at Steve Hoyle, because it's heavily a 12-step treatment program. It's going to be different. You're not going to be able to do the hobby craft stuff that you're so used to doing. You're going to have to spend your time studying. In the meantime, if I were you, in the prison library somewhere, there's copies of a book called Alcoholics Anonymous, called the Big Book.
Right.
Sir?
The big book. I'm familiar
Yes,
with
sir. Exactly. Have you read it?
I'm not gonna lie to you and say it extensively, but I've tried to work some of the steps in
Okay. Well, if you'd have told me you'd read it, I'd have called you a liar. How's that?
it.
No, I
I
want
said
you
it
to
in
get,
the middle lie, sir.
I want you to get the big book and read it cover to cover. Start with the first page that says Alcoholics Anonymous and read it cover to cover. And then when you finish up, turn it back to the front page and start over again and read it again. And when it talks about alcohol, you can think about meth and think about all the truth that's in it. It will begin to ring true with you, and you'll say, how did they know that? How did they know I thought that? So you do that, and by the time you get to Steve Hoyle, you'll be at the head of the class. All right? Now, here's something I've never told an inmate before in my life. I'm going to call Dr. Tucker, and I'm going to tell her you're coming. Dr. Tucker and I speak the same language because I'm an alcoholic that's sober a long time. And I like you. And anybody that, you know, here it is, we got 6 more cases today. It's 3:30, and we spent all this time with you. If anybody says we don't care about the men we see is a liar. Because what all of us want is what's best for you. And you think what's best for you is getting out. What's best for you is staying out and staying free from drugs and alcohol. So I'm calling Dr. Tucker, and I'm going to chat with her and just tell her you're coming, and tell her expectations can be real high for you and she can be really disappointed, or they can be real low for you and she'll be elated when it turns out you're a good student. Okay?
Okay.
Fair enough? All right. I devoutly hope that I'm on the board next time you come up, Mr. Lindsay. Hope I am. And I hope it's all good then, okay?
Yes, sir.
But today you've been denied. Good luck to you.
Good luck, Mr. Lindsay.
Good luck.
Okay, so let's unpack this. And we have the appeal. And let me just run down what initially happened, how he got this life sentence. And it starts off with getting caught, and we'll go through how he got caught. And really, so December 14, 2005, he's convicted, right? And he's convicted for attempted creation and operation of clandestine laboratory of a lab, right? But he didn't have a lab running. Conspiracy to produce, he wasn't producing, and possession of 12 grams or more. I don't know how much 12 grams is when it comes to this world, okay? But it doesn't sound like a lot. He was sentenced to basically, he was sentenced to 7 years on count 1, 10 years on count 2, 10 years without benefit of parole on count 3, and 2 years on count 4, but they were to run concurrently. Now, on April 10th, so a year, 6 months, 4 months later, they decided to sentence him again. And they sentenced him to life as an habitual offender. So someone's out to get him. Now, let's look at the bottom line facts. Nowhere in his jacket does he have violent crimes. Nowhere in his jacket has he hurt children. Nowhere in his jacket does he, has he murdered anyone, right? Like, he has served at the time of this hearing 16 years. And guess what? He's still in. As of 2024, remember, this hearing took place in the year 2000. He's serving 20 years. I mean, let that sink in. And I don't know what happened. They said, hey, go to Steve Hoyle and come back in 6 months. I don't know what happened. No idea. We just have his Vine, which says that, at 58 years old, he's still in Angola. Is it possible he had a write-up? Maybe. Is it possible something else happened? Maybe. But in my opinion, this is an injustice. Now, frankly, the first time I heard it, and the first time the DA came in like a wrecking ball, and I heard what the DA was saying, I was like, wow, good thing the DA is there. This guy is just pulling one over on the parole board. But then I listened to a second time, and I wrote down what the DA actually said, and I have to argue, and I have to just say, look, this. He said he was found with a taser, a police scanner, gloves, and extra magazines and firearms with the things rubbed off. Yeah, that sounds like, maybe someone who's up to no good. But then again, it's a taser, it's extra magazines, it's firearms, and it's a police scanner and gloves. I mean, like, okay, and a knife taped to his steering wheel column, which sounds dangerous, but the guy doesn't have any violent history. He hasn't actually killed anyone. So like, why would he serve more time than those who have literally taken lives? In this very docket alone, there are people that had taken lives that were getting granted. And then there's something else that the DA said that just made me, it just didn't feel right, which is, he says that the police officer is afraid for his life to come to this parole hearing testify. When have we ever seen an arresting police officer show up at a parole hearing? I think we have seen it maybe 2 or 3 times, and it was only because, and not a parole hearing, even a commutation hearing, and it was probably only because they themselves had gotten shot by the perp, or maybe their partner was killed. Not an arresting officer. And this arrest, it was not a big deal. They went to the motel and they literally cuffed him while he's laying in the bed immobile from a black widow spider bite. I mean, that was it. I'll read through it. So again, the first time I heard it, I said, wow, good job, DA, and then the second and third time I listened to it and wrote it down, what he actually said, it's just, he served enough time for any of that anyways. And, he does have a lot of write-ups. That 31 rule violations, that's a ton. We see people with 1, 2, 3, or even none. But it's still, so what? Let him out. He's ready to go, And this was one of the only few times in recent history I haven't fast forwarded the parole project, because this is a good parole project case, although he was saying he could. Actually, technically not. I don't know. Anyways, let's go over the appeal. Thank you, Sir Richard. And it's interesting. Sir Richard had in the notes when this was initially done, like, hey, look at this guy. He's still locked up. He didn't hurt any children. So December 14, 2005, he's convicted. So he's going on 25 years in prison now for attempted creation. He didn't even have it. Of a clandestine laboratory. Conspiracy to produce it. Okay, so we go through this. And I get that he was a dealer, but still, come on. DAs wanted to get him, so they got him. Oh, right, the other thing the DA said, voice changer. Maybe the guy just liked buying gadgets from Sharper Image, This is 2005. I don't know, like, what's he doing with all these gadgets? Maybe he thought he was cool. Maybe he was paranoid. So on or about April 27, 2004, sometime after 2 p.m., Detective Liberto and Deputy Bullish, both from St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office, at the time of the offense, were conducting traffic stops near the Cause Boulevard and I-10 intersection in Slidell, Louisiana. As Deputy Bullock conducted one of the traffic stops, a white male approached the detective based on the complaint made by an anonymous source. The officers conducted a drive-through surveillance of the Slidell Plaza Inn located at blah, blah, blah. The officers observed a pizza delivery approach room 130. So they're claiming this all happened like by chance, okay? A white female answered the door and made eye contact with the officers during the pizza transaction. So they're sitting at the corner. The pizza man comes, she opens the door, and they make eye contact, right? She abruptly completed the transaction and closed the room door, right? Because why would she sit there and chat with the pizza guy? All right, anyways, Detective Liberto beckoned the pizza delivery and questioned him regarding the occupants of the motel room. Based on the statements made by the pizza deliverer, the prior statement of the anonymous tipster, the officer knocked on the door of room 130. So this is where they're getting all of a sudden probable cause. I don't know, right? Wow. A female occupant who spoke through the door, the closed door, asked who was at the door. The officer responded, "Sheriff's office." At that point, the female occupant inquired as to the purpose of the visit. So she's doing the right thing from her rights perspective. The officer responded, "We just want to talk." The female occupant then stated, "If you want to talk to me, you're going to need a search warrant." So she's doing the right thing from her perspective. For all of you auditors out there, the officers continued to engage in conversation with the female occupant. They inquired as to whether there were any other occupants of the room. She initially responded negatively and then said yes. The officers asked the occupant if she could crack the door open. Her second mistake. The occupant complied, but affixed the chain to the locked door. Yeah, and she just gave them probable cause. Boom, there you go. The officers asked the occupants to pass her identification, the identification of any other occupants through the door opening. The female produced 2 pieces of identification. Based on the pieces of identifications, the officers believed the room was occupied by later determined to be Stacy and Leonard, the defendant. The officers were able to briefly observe the other occupant, initially described as a large white male, as he stood in the room with a blanket pulled over his back and draped over his head. The officers ran the identification and discovered an outstanding arrest warrant from Tucker. You just got to tell me, why are criminals so dumb? I mean, it's like she knew right off the bat, you need a search warrant. And then she opens the door and then she gives them ID. And it's like, you don't need to do any of that. You did nothing wrong, but the officers confirmed that the warrant as valid and active. They informed their supervisor. Sergeant Sharp of the situation were instructed to execute the warrant. Upon Sergeant Sharp's immediate arrival at the scene, the officers used bolt cutters to release the door chain and gain entrance. Bolt cutters, like the little flimsy chain. Upon entry, the officers secured the occupants and observed several items in plain view, including a digital scale, butane torches, blah, 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 I guess that's cold medicine, blister packs, and glass smoking pipes. Based on their training and experience, the officers associated the items with methamphetamine production and consumption. The subject identified of the officers, Larry Lynn Tucker. The defendant was lying on the bed located at the far end of the room from the entrance and was apparently sick. He was throwing up. He advised the officers that he was suffering from a spider bite. Can you imagine? It's that dang spider that took him down. The officers placed the defendant under arrest and summoned the ambulance. The defendant was taken to North Shore Regional Medical Center for medical attention. Deputy Bullock rode in the ambulance with the defendant while the detective Liberto sought and obtained a search warrant of the motel room. Wait, so they did all this without a search warrant? Oh, they did this to just execute the arrest warrant, and now they're getting a search warrant? While the search warrant was executed, Deputy Bullock remained at the hospital with the defendant, whose true identity unfolding during the hospital stay. Upon discharge, the defendant was transported to jail. Captain Narcotics Division observed a 1995 gray Chevrolet pickup truck backed in the parking space located in front of room 130. The officers observed elements in open view of the toolbox located at the bed of the truck and suspected that the presence of the mobile laboratory. At the time of the Deputy Bullock arrival, the officers were seeking and ultimately received a search warrant for the vehicle. I mean, let's be real. This guy is no big-time dealer. He's in a motel room and his lab is maybe in a truck. Upon execution of the warrant for the motel room, several items were seized in evidence, including aforementioned items, a Gatorade container containing 1,200, I don't know if that's a lot or not, tablets, paperwork with the defendant and Leonard's actual names on it. Mail address, the defendant, mail address, blah, blah, blah. A voice changer, sandwich bags, a white funnel, aluminum foil, a Sprint Palm Pilot. Whoa, remember those? Binoculars, a blue covered pen, and a Sprint cellular phone. A 25-round magazine for an Uzi. Okay, well, that's cool. A 556 millimeter full metal jacket round. A High Times magazine containing references to illicit narcotics. A High Times magazine. You guys remember that? I remember those magazines. That's funny. Come on. They list that as in their evidence report. High Times magazine. Okay. That was like the Playboy of drugs back in the day. 3 30-round magazines, a Colt AR-15 firearm with a scope, an Uzi, a smoking apparatus, blister packs, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, I mean, finding that is scary. I mean, you know, you don't want to have body armor and all those weapons for a convicted felon. I get it is scary, but still not 25 years in prison scary. A glass vial with the white residue, candy container, and the suspected illegal narcotics. I would argue it's worth the sentence he got, but not the habitual life sentence. That's just insane. Candy container, suspected illegal narcotics, and a plastic baggie. We see people in Connecticut that get caught with this stuff. There was a guy we covered recently. I haven't played it for you yet, where he actually stole a bulletproof vest from a police car, and I think had an AR-15, and he got like 5 years. Defense initials, and was located in the bed. We had someone who shot a man 3 times in the stomach, and he only got 3 years, and he was like a 4th-time felon, and that's just insane. I mean, that's insane. I don't know how he only got 3 years. 3 years for 3 bullets, she said. A military-type grenade, 4 Motorola police-type radios. A real grenade? He had a grenade? What? Why did he have a grenade? 4 Motorola police-type radios, a stun gun, a revolver, and a knife. The contents of some of the items were later used at St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Crime Laboratory. According to the scientific analysis report, an impertinent part of the organic plastic container of numerous round white tablets was determined to contain blah, blah, blah. A metal, I can't pronounce it. Sour candy tin containing residue was determined to contain meth. A glass vial containing residue determined to contain meth, and a clear plastic Ziploc containing of green vegetable materials determined to contain the devil's lettuce. So he did make a Brady claim, right? Which makes sense, saying that the whole search and seizure wasn't legal. But let's see, this is interesting. During his trial testimony, Detective Liberto further detailed the evidence collected herein, the approximate number of tablets containing 60 milligrams each. Photographs of the defendant's tattoos located on the back were published to the jury. The tattoos were described as follows. On the left side is a look like a skeleton type individual holding what appears to be an AR-15 with a chef's hat. I would have to say in the left hand, he's holding some kind of glass container, some sort of wearing an apron. Smoke from the weapon spells the name Meth Man. During cross-examination, Detective Liberto testified regarding the renting information in the hotel room. According to the detective, the room was leased by Larry Ross. No further information regarding the rental of the room or identity of Larry Ross was obtained. During redirect examination, Detective Liberto responded positively when asked whether the defendant could have checked the motel room under the alias Larry Ross. I don't know. There's something else that I picked up here with the spider that was interesting to me. Page 3 specifically argues that there was no evidence. Okay. Note that the itemized studies during the search of the truck were not tested. The defendant further argues as to count 3, the defendant argues that there was no evidence of an overt act to commit with other individual manufacturer meth. He contends that there was no other person was named. The defendant argues that there was no evidence of a combination of agreement between the defendant and another person to commit a crime. He also knows that there was no evidence of who bought the narcotics, over what time period. The defendant contends that he was unable to notice the items in the room of the truck due to the spider bites. The defendant testified during trial that, here it is. The defendant testified, did I write 22? It's page 16. So the defendant testifies during the trial as the sole defense witness. According to the defendant, so he testified at trial, he lived in Mississippi at the time of the offense. The defendant worked near Slidell as a contractor with an individual named Larry. On April 25th, 2004, the defendant claimed to be bitten by a spider, and it wasn't Spider-Man. It wasn't Alex Ross. Is that who it is? What's the Spider-Man's name? It wasn't the good kind of spider, I guess. Let's put it that way. On April 25, 2004, the defendant claimed to be bitten by a spider. The defendant stated that he may have been bitten multiple times during a 2-day period. After the first bite, his leg became swollen. The next day, he noticed a second bite on the inside of his leg. The second bite was one of a different characteristic than the first observed bite. The following day, April 26th, the defendant became very ill and was unable to drive back to Mississippi. Larry Ross drove the defendant to his motel and allowed the defendant to stay there to recover. As the defendant was sick at the time, he did not remember the details of the instant arrest. The defendant reiterated that the room did not belong to him. The defendant assumed that the items in the room belonged to Larry. The defendant further explained that Larry Ross used the defendant's vehicle to drive the defendant to the motel before allowing Larry to use of his vehicle to go back to the work site. The defendant removed his personal items and brought it into the room. The defendant stated that the truck parked in front of the motel room also did not belong to him, and that he had never been in the vehicle. The defendant did not know. The defendant also stated that he did not provide the false identification that was given to the police officer. The defendant further stated that the recovered weapons did not belong to him. The defendant admitted that he was in some of the photographs removed from the cellular phone located at the scene. The defendant also admitted that a computer seized from the scene belonged to him and that the toolbox seized in the bed of the truck belonged to him. According to the defendant, he was sick during his stay in the motel room and was unfamiliar with the bulk of the evidence located at the scene. The defendant testified that his tattoos were very old, and he admitted that he smoked meth when he was younger, member of a motorcycle club. The defendant stated that during the few years prior to the trial, his health condition, namely Hep C, prevented him from using meth. The defendant was unsure location of Larry Ross at the time of the trial. During a cross-examination, the defendant stated that he dated Stacy on and off. During inquiries regarding the defendant's criminal history, the defendant stated that he previously pled guilty to an offense so that charges against Ladner would be dismissed. When asked whether he was smoking at the, in one of the cellular photographs, the defendant stated as follows: "I don't know. I can't tell what it's doing. Could have been smoking tobacco. At this point, I know when the pictures were taken, they're probably several years old." The defendant further testified that he did not know who Larry Tucker is. The defendant suggested that the items seized at the scene belonged to Larry. Okay, I mean, obviously his testimony is untrue. I wonder if he was even bitten by the spider. It was clearly his stuff, in my opinion, but that's not the point. But he's still locked up and he still has a life sentence. Maybe we'll see him this year. I don't know. It could be he got it right up and that's why we're not seeing him. It could be, who knows? But thank you, Sir Richard, for providing the info. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Do you think I was bamboozled? Do you think he is dangerous? He should be locked up. He served enough time. I don't know. You tell me. And with that, I'll let you go.
You just made dumb decision after dumb decision and just stayed dumb all that time. Just kept doing dumb things, right?
Yes, sir.
No, sir. No. You're trying to make sense of it, Mr. Lindsay. It doesn't make any sense. You are a pretty smart guy, and you're trying to apply logic to what you did. Well, I just wasn't making good decisions. I just was acting stupid. No, you're a drug addict. Drug addicts make bad decisions because they're drug addicts. I'm an alcoholic. I'll make you a long list of the bad decisions I made. And you know what? The very first meeting I ever went to, first AA meeting I went to, and I didn't go through treatment or anything. I'll tell you what I said. I said, I can't believe I'm so stupid. It's exactly what I said and exactly how I felt until I learned that